Hey guys, Zack here, and welcome back to another action figure review, and today we'll be taking a look at the Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom Thrash and Throw Tyrannosaurus Rex. Now, when I first got this figure back in April of 2018, I really liked it. I didn't love it as much as the Red Rex, but this was still a very nice figure for me. Over time, I kind of saw the flaws in this thing, so I don't love it as much. The sculpting's great, the detailing's great, and even the painting on this figure looks very nice, but the articulation and some of the design choices on this thing are a little questionable. So, yeah. We'll talk about that when we get there, but first we'll take a look at the painting on this figure. And the painting on this figure is very nice. Not the best. In fact, I'd even say that the painting here is comparable to the Extreme Chomping Tyrannosaurus that I reviewed a while back, but yeah, the painting here still looks very nice. So most of the figure is a orangish brownish color, which does look very nice. And on top here, we have a dark shade of brown that's on the back and stops at the back of the neck right here. It doesn't go on the tail, unfortunately, it just kind of stops there, which, again, very unfortunate, but it's whatever. But, yeah. And some of that brown painting is actually on the snout as well, and even around the eyes, which actually does look nice. And speaking of the eyes are painted yellow with black pupils. The teeth are painted a bonish white color, but the painting here looks very sloppy. So, yeah. The bottom teeth don't look too bad, but the upper teeth do look a little rough. But anyway, going to the mouth here, we can see that the inside of the mouth is painted a pinkish color with a glossy finish to it, which does look very nice. There's some weird, like, bubbles on it, or, like, weird markings. I don't know what that's all about, but, again, it's there. So, yeah. Anyway, the underside of the figure is painted a beige color, which does look nice. However, in some spots on this figure, there are some scuff marks, which don't really know how they got there, but they're there. So, yeah. Going to the toes, we can see that the toenails are painted black with a glossy finish, but unfortunately, the same can't be said about the fingernails. Really would have been nice, but I've gotten used to that at this point, so yeah. And of course, underneath here, we have the scan code. And we have the new Jurassic World logo here. So, yeah. Anyway, that's kind of foreshadowing right there. But anyway, that is it for the painting on this figure. And the painting on this figure, very nice. There are some spots where it could have been a little better, but for the most part, the painting here still looks very nice. So the painting on this figure gets a pass. Now I'll take a look at the articulation. And the articulation on this figure isn't the best, but it's not really the articulation itself, it's just the way they designed this thing, so yeah. Anyway, first of all, the arms can move 360. You do kind of have to force it, and I wouldn't recommend doing that, but they can move 360 if you wanted. The legs can move about, but it's very tight, so I wouldn't recommend doing it a lot. And we have some swivels at the ankle here. Now, the reason why the swivels are here, it's not because they want more articulation in this figure, or to help this figure stand. The reason why the swivels are here is because, well, just so this figure could fit in the box. Which, yeah, if you do get this figure, it'll be in the box like that. So, yeah. It sounds like a good idea, but the thing is, that kind of affects the way this figure stands. But, yeah. I wouldn't move, this leg a lot, because we do have some wires in here, because this figure is actually electronic, in case you couldn't tell before, but yeah. So basically, one thing that this figure can do is, well, this. Hold on. This figure can stop. This figure can stomp, which is actually very cool, and actually very reminiscent of the red Tyrannosaurus Rex from the original Jurassic Park toy line, which, yeah, nice little touch. The button here, I'm not gonna lie, a little sensitive, but still a nice touch nonetheless. Now, the tail here is where, the tail here is where most of the gimmicks are. So basically, if you move it from side to side, you get kind of like a thrashing sound, which does sound very nice and a nice little touch. And you can grab human figures. For example, here's Dr. Billy Grant. Actually, no, we'll show that off in a second. I still want to go over some of the sounds here, but basically, if you move the tail upwards, then you get the male Tyrannosaurus roar instead of, well, Roberta herself. Now, Roberta never made this sound in the original Jurassic Park. The male Tyrannosaurus, Buck, he made that sound in the Lost World, but Roberta never made this roar. And that's where they kind of messed up in Jurassic World, because they, gave her that specific sound, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And that's actually something that not a lot of people really bring up, but yeah. At least it's a Tyrannosaurus, but they could have done something completely different. They could have just given this thing an Indominus Rex sound, but yeah. Speaking of which, if we move the tail down, then we get just that. An Indominus Rex sound. I don't get why they went for that. So, with the Tyrannosaurus, or a lot of the other roarivores in this line, because a lot of them do make Tyrannosaurus sounds, it doesn't make sense, but at the same time, it's somewhat understandable. Okay, so just give it a T.rex roar, alright. With the T.rex itself, alright, what does the T.rex sound like from Jurassic Park? An iconic roar that, everybody knows. Let's give it an Indominus Rex sound. Why not? That'll always, ponder my mind, just why they went for that choice, but yeah. But anyway, if you do it again, then we actually get a much better sound, which is actually a T.rex, and is probably my favorite sound of this whole thing, so yeah. And that is pretty much it for the articulation on this figure. Sorry, I just need to adjust that. And yeah, that's it for the articulation. On the articulation, not bad. The sounds they chose, a little weird, but the articulation itself, not bad. Sometimes when you do move the tail upwards to do the uproar, I guess, whatever you want to call it, it does get stuck, so you don't get it immediately, but yeah. Like so. You do kind of have to play with it a little, but for the most part, it still works pretty well. I guess, one thing I really dislike about this figure, the design, the choice of plastic they used was not great at all, because, as you can see here, just pay attention to this seam right here, because this is where the figure moves, but just pay attention to that. I'm putting no pressure into this thing, and this figure can easily just bend like that. So, yeah, very thin and very cheap plastic is definitely something that they shouldn't have done for this figure. But, yeah, I digress. Oh, so, yeah, this figure does have a problem standing, so you do kind of have to play with it a little. But, yeah, anyway, the articulation gets a pass. The sounds on this figure, well, they're not bad, except for the Indominus Rex. I don't, again, get why they chose that, but, the sounds are good for the most part. The articulation, not bad, so yeah. The articulation and all that get a pass. Now take a look at the sculpting on this figure, and the sculpting on this figure is great. This looks exactly like the Tyrannosaurus from Jurassic Park, and something that I'd like to correct. In my original review for the Extreme Chomping Tyrannosaurus, I made the mistake that this was a cut. That is not a cut, that is actually musculature, which actually looks very nice, but we'll take a look at that when we take a look at the detailing on this figure, because the detailing, again, here looks great. But yeah, no, the sculpting here is incredible. I love how this thing looks. Especially that head. That head is the classic Tyrannosaurus Rex, which I love. Again, this figure is kind of aggressively stanced. Maybe if it was something like this, I feel like it'd just look a little better, but yeah, that's just me. But for the most part, the sculpting on this figure is incredible. So the sculpting here gets a pass. Now take a look at the detailing. And the detailing on this figure is good. In fact, I'd even say that it's very good. So the detailing on the head here looks very nice. All of the scales and crevices and creases and whatnot here look very nice. And we even have some scars throughout the figure, which is very nice, and is actually something that I wish was on the Extreme Chomping Tyrannosaurus. But yeah, still looks nice. So yeah. Going down the body, we have more creasing in the body, which looks very nice. More cuts and some more creasing underneath, which looks very nice. The creasing continues throughout. And going to the leg, again, the musculature here looks very well defined and very nice. And the feet are detailed pretty nicely as well. Unfortunately, we do have kind of a seam right here, but for the most part, the detailing here looks great. And going to the tail, all of the creasing throughout the tail looks very nice. We do get a seam right here, but the detailing on the rest of the tail, again, looks nice. And that is pretty much it for the detailing on this figure. And the detailing on this figure is very good. The detailing here looks very great, very well defined. And the scars, again, I would have preferred if they were on the extreme chomping Tyrannosaurus Rex as well, but either way, the detailing here looks fantastic. So the detailing here gets a pass. Now, at the end of the day, should you get this, if you're buying this, you know, as a collector, then I'd say yes. If this is just going to sit on a shelf, I'd say that this figure looks very nice for that. In terms of playability, there's a lot of play value here, but I can't really see this figure lasting for, you know, 25 years like the old Kenner figures did. You know, it seems sturdy right now, but I feel like at one point down the road, these figures are, or some of these figures, actually maybe a good chunk of them, they might break over time. So, yeah. And again, the thin quality plastic here, not great. So if this figure were to fall too great of a height, then I could easily imagine this figure breaking, because this figure, it doesn't feel sturdy. It doesn't feel solid or anything like that. There are some points on this figure where it feels like I might break it, but I mean, if you have, you know, kids who play gently, then I'd say that this is good, but over time, I'd say that, you know, if you have kids that are more rough, then probably don't get this, but yeah. Anyway, if you want to know how big this figure is, here she is next to Dr. Billy Grant, and they scale up very nicely with each other, which looks very nice. And just because I didn't show this off earlier, here is the action gimmick. So basically, you move the tail upwards. That'll always bother me. And right when you're at the human figure, or whoever you want to use, you just chomp down, and there you go. And you can thrash this figure around. This figure doesn't really hold human figures well, but honestly, that's not too much of a problem. It's still pretty cool, but yeah. But at the end of the day, this figure, not the best, but if you're buying this, sit it on a shelf, then I'd say that, yeah, this figure looks great. In terms of prices, you're looking at about 40 bucks, and you can still buy this in Targets and whatnot. So, yeah. If you want, I'd say go for this, but I wouldn't rush to get this figure. If I were to recommend any T-Rex figure, I would have to recommend the Extreme Chomping Tyrannosaurus. The Super Colossal T-Rex looks nice, but it's just way too big. But the Extreme Chomping Tyrannosaurus is a bit smaller than this, but, you know, it actually stands well, and, you know, I feel like that's more of a good figure for kids and collectors as well. But this is a nice figure, but not the best. And I don't have the Bite and Fight Tyrannosaurus, so I couldn't really tell you my thoughts on it, but yeah. But this figure, not the best, but it's not awful either, so yeah. Anyway, that is it for today. Have a great rest of your week, and I will see you in the next video. Peace, Zack out.